Okay, makatuto sa lesson 2, man is created in the image of God. Page 3. Ha? Wala. Palakpak lang. Okay, what makes man different from the rest of creation? The question is, are we just higher forms of animals, or are we really a product of evolution? In Thai, mayroon silang term, satprasa, which means we are holy animals. So, sa ilang pagtulok, ang tao is a kind of animal, only higher form, with a higher potential, with a potential, I believe, kay tungod praset, so with a potential to be holy. But the contradicting thing with both Buddhism kag Hinduism, which I assume dira na sila nagkuha sa sinang thought, is ang tao is satprasad. Pero ang ginasimba nila, kag ginaludhan nila, mga baka, mga elepante, nga damo kamot, and a mixture of all those things. And so, are we really just higher forms of animals? Kasi ang mga tao nga sa aton palibot, they believe and they look at humanity this way, that we are no different from our cousins or distant cousins nga mga sapat, that we evolve into this form of being, which, if evolution is true, in the next million years we could evolve as into a different state of being, as one Marvel series would portray it to be, nga may X-Men. So, tao na sa una, but they've evolved into a different mutation, which made them superhumans. And so, what sets man apart from the rest of creation? And the fact is, man is created. That fact is, man is created in the image of God. So our base text is Genesis 1:26. God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." And verse 27 is the actual fulfillment of that plan. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Well, let's start with the meaning. Last time, what is the meaning of God's glory? God created you for his glory. Now we would want to look at the meaning of the image of God. Kagina, Sir Neil coincidentally defined to us that Jesus is the image of the invisible God. But what does it mean that God created man in his image? Now, in 6 days, God created the heavens and the earth with everything in it through his word. So there's a pattern with Genesis 1. And I don't know kung ipakita ni next time kung mawali si John Reyes ang Genesis 1, but the Jews are fond of patterns. Gusto nila daw nakaraya tanan. So, God said, "Let there be blank." And there was blank. And so for 6 days, you have been observing these patterns. There was evening and there was morning the first day. There was evening in the morning, and morning and evening the second day. There was pattern for 6 days, but when God created man, there was a commentary in verse 26, which God never did with other creation. Nagkomentary siya, nga doon istorya ko galingon, let us make man in our image, something he did not say with the rest of creation. So this plan was unique to the creation of man. So what does it mean that man is created in the image of God? The meaning is, God created a creature that is similar to himself to represent him in the world. Okay? Similar to represent. Okay? Similar to represent. Duwa na ka shades ang meaning. So to be made in the image of God is to be similar to God, so that we can represent him in the world. There are two words gingamit dere, tselem kag demut, which is image and likeness. That refers to something that is similar but not identical to the thing it represents. Yes, we have the similarity with God. Yes, we have to represent God, but we are not identical with the thing. Anong meaning sina? Anggid ka mo, but you're not the same. Okay? For example, this word is used with a model of an altar. Si King Ahaz became so idolatrous that when he went to Damascus, nanluyagan niya gid ang model sang altar, that when he went home, he said, I want a model of this. Gusto ko ang do parehas gid to ang nakita ko sa. So it's not the same, it's not identical, it has similarity. It was supposed to represent it, so that's the word. Or ang second nga gamit sini, the figures of gourds, which is actually an image of of an idol they made. Second Chronicle. Oh, okay. So moreover, the word image can also be used of something that represents something else. So similarity to represent. Next example, ang chilem or images, images of tumors, images of mice that ravage the land. Amo ni ang ginplano sa mga Palestinian when they captured the Ark of the Covenant. Kag pag-abot dito sa ila, they were cursed. So hamalila iulit tani sa Israel kay gin-curse ta sang Ginoo, but sa pagdulong tani puli sa Israel, let's also make an image of something that God used to hurt us. Kaya mo lang nila nga kubos kapag insindi. So it's not identical, but it was created to have a similarity to represent something. Ezekiel, images of the Chaldeans. So, by now, kung manotice nyo, ang mga example yung gamit tatanan when this word or these words were used, both demot and shelem, are mostly used negatively in images of idols or altars. Whether the words gingamit image, model, figure, same thing. It is something that is similar to represent it, but not identical to the thing. So basically, when God says he will create man in his image, he is saying that he will create something similar to himself to be his representative. Now, theologians often try to define the image of God in terms of specific characteristics. And going through seminary and going through many Sunday schools, normally, kung magsiling kita image of God, ang gatudlo or ang gahambal, automatically mahambal, the image of God is what? Intellect. The image of God is what? Emotion or will. But actually, ang gusto lang sa Ginoo is, kagnamian ko sang emphasis ni Wayne Grudem, the Genesis text only is telling us that man is like God. Ang plano niya sa Ginoo, when God said, I will make man like me. That's it. Wala na to siya may ginaisip pa nga intellect, emotion, or will. I will make something like me. Not identical to me. I will not make gods, but I will make something that will be like me and represent me in this world. And so the more you see God and know God in Scripture, it will fill in the details to explain in which ways are we like God. So as we get to know more of God through the Bible, the more we will get to know how we are created to be like Him. Okay, amo to ka namin isang ginhambal ni Sir Neil kagina, we don't fully represent, we don't fully image God in a way nga we can reflect His love, we can reflect His wisdom, we can reflect His power, but we are not eternal, we're not omnipotent, we are not omniscient, we're not omnipresent. May kaanggid ta sa Ginoo, but we are not identical to the God we represent because we are not gods. And Genesis 1:26 to 31 is related to God's commands and descriptions. Because the image of God is tied to these functions. Kaganami nga and gin-point out ni isa ka theologian, namian ko nga how this theology is textual rather than topical. And I think kung pila na sa inyo nagsugod na sang story of hope kag pag-abot na sa creation of man bla nagamaka mo intellect, emotion and will, dira ko nagalin kay intellect, emotion and will, gitudloan man lang kami. So as we understand Genesis 1:26, amo na intellect, emotion and will. But actually the image of God in man, right then and there. So Genesis 1:26 to 31 is already telling us what does this look like. So the image of God is tied to four things sa siningang mga verses. Number one, the image of God is reflected in our function as a co-ruler. It's also reflected in our relationship as male and female. It's also reflected in our reproduction as co-creator, and lastly, as stewardship given to man. So as we seek to live out these functions, we are reflecting the image of God in us, and we are living out the purpose for which He created us, and that is we live for His glory. Okay? It reflects God's glory when we are actually living out our similarity and our representation of God in this world for which we are created. And masabat na dira ang issue sang gin-share sang friend ni ng Lisa nga feeling niya ang secular job niya is hindering her from maximizing her fulfillment of God's purpose in her life. Is that true? So kita tananihan dapat na lang ta maguntat obra kag mabulos-bulos na lang ta di kada Domingo wali, and all of us just be full-time ministers of God. Okay? So we will go through 5 or 4 functions, but lantaon ta ang oras sa subong kung isa lang aton ka function matapos, we'll just finish that up today, and the rest ka tatlo we'll do this next time. Okay? So the initial plan of God was to create man after His image. Then when He created man, He commanded them to fulfill certain functions that have direct relations as God's image bearer. So apat ni ka function: co-ruler, relationship, co-creator, and steward. Okay? Ang co-ruler. The image of God in man is of a function. And the first function is to be a co-ruler of God over His creation. I want to emphasize, pagkambasing let us make man in our image. Right then and there, ang unang function ng tao is what? Let them have dominion. Dominion over what? Ginklaro sa Ginoo, and I like how God is specific, because these are the domain by which you will dominate things over the sea, over the heavens, and over the earth. Klaro na yan. So sea, land, and air. Okay? All are branches of the military. You have dominion, you subjugate these things. And the words he used there, subdue and have dominion. So we are made to rule. That's our first function. So we are given the role to have dominion, to rule as God's representative on earth. No wonder many people want to be kings and queens, because this is the purpose for which we were made by God, but not to be a king or queen by ourselves. Nga daw feeling mo ikaw na pinakataas. But we were created to rule as God's representative. So in a way, we can say that God is ruling the earth through humans. Can that be true? Yes. That's why there is a word that is called vice-regent, which it is the sharing, or we are God's vice-regent to share the power and authority He has given man. Now, the vice-regent of Thailand, ang nagligad nga kilala ko lang, patay na to sa, ang ngalan niya, isa to ka-general, ang ngalan niya si Pon Ek Prem. Kagamal nila, in the case nga maubos tanan nga mga royal family, amo na siyang general that would stand as the vice-regent, the second most powerful person in the kingdom, to nga ang niya na do designated survivor. So that man is so influential, so powerful, that he has the power of almost like the king. Okay? And in many cases, the vice-regent, amo na ang tawag nila sa ang cabinet members are alter ego of the president. Kaya hindi sila presidente, but in the various departments of the land, amo nang ginatawag nga vice-regent. They have a power of the president to use his power as his representative. So ang cabinet member, sa education, he or she is not the president, but he or she has the power of the president to represent the president in that area of domain. Gets nyo? So God is king over the earth, but in my barangay or in my sitio or in my area of responsibility, I am his vice regent. God gave me the responsibility to rule over this domain, land, sea, and air, as his representative. Okay? So God covers all, but he pleased. Lanto bla ang Diyos hindi dalok sa gahom. He chose to share his power, he chose to share his authority, and man made a mistake nga trying to live like a king or a queen apart from God. But until we realize that we have a power given to us by God, authority given to us by God to rule and subdue the earth, but to do it as his representative. So I'm not the king, but I am the representative of the king. No wonder nga si David, pag-reflect niya ni Psalm 8, Amalia, what is man that you're mindful of him? You have created him a little lower than the heavenly beings. Ang King James translated it lower than the angels, which some translation or commentators would even believe you have created us a little lower than yourself. Nga mas nubo lang tagamay sa Ginoo or sa mga anghel, because we were given dominion over the work of God's hands. And the good picture here is you have put all things under man's feet. So we are not on the top of the food chain per se, but we were made to dominate. We were made to rule God's creation. Ano ning all things? Again, like Genesis 1, over animals, birds, and fish. The three parts of the earth: land, air, and sea. Therefore, we are not another kind of an animal, or the animal on top of the food chain. But because we were made to be different, given the function to rule over creation as God's representative, who is ruler over all things. We are vice regents. We are the alter ego of the King of Kings. Okay? Now, interestingly, the word subdue in Hebrew, according to the ESV Study Bible, was used elsewhere, where it means to bring a people or a land into subjection so that it will give service to the one who subdues it. For example, the land is subdued before the Lord, and after that you shall return and be free of obligation to the Lord and to Israel, and this land shall be your possession before the Lord. Okay, this term, if the people of God, the people of Reuben, and the land shall be subdued. Now, mostly they notice that this word actually is the word, kung i-translate mo sa aton lingwahe sang mananakop. What is that word? You subjugate that land, sakupon mo na nga land, and make that land serve you. So, for 400 years, ginsakop tas ang Spain to serve Spain's purpose. So we have no rights of our own. The land subjugated was used, was discovered, was developed, not for the sake of the people itself, but for the sake of their masters. Diba? And what surprises me, ang thought nila sang ano na ganyan, sang imperialismo or sang sakupay, how can a minority from a foreign land, a powerful foreign land, can actually dominate the majority of a people for so long? Pila mo lang tong Espanyol. Actually, kung ang Pilipinas, kahit hindi pa to United Nations of the Philippines, United Islands, kung nagtipon lang tato sana sa aton kusog, sa aton pwersa, ano gid bi mahimo sang katiting lang, pila mo lang ka Espanyol. But they made it work. Okay? And so, this is the word you use. To bring a land or a people into subjection to serve the dominator's purpose. Okay? And by implication, or by this definition, the idea here is that the man and woman are to make the resources of the earth, pag silang subdue the earth, meaning you would discover and develop the resources of the earth to make it useful for you. Okay? You discover, you develop. Amo na ang space. Sulat sa imo space. Why ka gasabat? Makwes ko di karon, hindi ka kapasar. This command gives way for the use of, ang discover is science, ang develop is technology. Okay? So human beings ought to represent God by multiplying Eden over all the earth as a reflection of Him, of His character in all that we do. Now, this thought, I took it from one of my professors of theology. God's intention was for Eden to be multiplied. How do we know? Anong sugo sa Ginoo kay Adan? Go and multiply and fill the earth. Eden was not supposed to be contained. Eden was supposed to be reproduced. So there is a nagsugod sa Eden, but there was not only to be one garden on the earth. So kung si Adan kag si Eva nanganak, kag wala sila gin curse sa garden, ang natabo sa Eden should be multiplied elsewhere as they fill the earth. So there would be Eden sa Iraq, there would be Eden sa Pilipinas, there would be Eden sa Thailand, there would be Eden all over the earth because God made us to subdue the earth. So we ought to discover and to develop the earth to multiply Eden. So we reflect God's character when we farm. We reflect God's character when we do math. We reflect God's character when we do science, business, or even raising children. Because this is what God made us for, to develop the earth and to discover it. So, as we fulfill our roles in our work, we are ruling over the earth and tending the earth. We are causing the earth to be fruitful and multiply. Okay? Because apart from discovering and developing the earth will not develop itself. There will be no order. There is a natural law. Pero kung manotice nyo, it cannot maximize its own potential without man. Magambal sila kung isa ang nature needs a break from man, but God created this earth for man to discover it, for man to use it, and for man to develop it. Okay? So, as an implication, as man discovers and develops the world through science and technology and causes it to be fruitful and multiply for his benefit, he is living out the function of being God's co-ruler on the earth. So, Christians of all people should be involved with science and technology, not as a means to disprove God, but as a means of being His image bearer. Now, kung ako anak sang mi ganin ng Lisa, kung may bata siya, and for her mind, my purpose in life is to glorify God, not in a secular way. Kung may bata siya, choosing a course for college, ano iya i-advise? Or ano pasugtan niya? Kung maglisensiya, Nay, gusto ko mag-doktor, Nay, gusto ko mag-engineer, gusto ko mag-architect. Ano lang ginaisip niya? Because secular life is hindering her fulfillment of God's purpose. Din makantuya bata. Seminaryo. Right? Because there are Christian groups who are anti-technology. Wala sila gagamit teknolohiya. Kung madayon kami lagaw sa Amerika, there is one community ang gusto namin lagawan, ang Amish people. Ano sila? Wala sila gagamit sa lakyan, kay gusto nila kabayo. Wala sila gagamit cellphone, kay gusto nila wala distraction. Wala sila gamit heater, wala sila gagamit aircon, wala sila refrigeration. So gusto nila pangabudlay because they're anti-technology. But in itself, they have technology. Wala sila kuno washing machine, pero te, may ginalipalibot-libot, man sila na sila balay. Hindi sila gusto picturean because they think that technology will make them worldly. So of all people, technology has both its good side and its bad side. But of all people, Christians should be involved with technology. Why? We were made to develop God's earth. Okay? And we were made to discover God's earth, but not as a means to disprove God. Because the phenomenon of humanities, which started in the 1700s, ang College of Humanities, actually ang college nga concept, nagsugod na sa School of Theology. Tuon sila sa Bible, may university sila, amo na pinakataas nga learning, to the point nga nagwa ang College of Humanities. Since then, man tried to use knowledge as a means to what? Disprove God. So they've been working so hard to be an intellectual para gusto nila kontrahon ang Diyos. But of all people, Christians should be involved in science to discover the world God created as a means of knowing Him more, not as a means of disproving Him. Okay? And so, it is also to be noted that talking about ruling and subduing the earth, that governments are not established by God until Genesis 9 or after the flood. Paano yun naging establish ang gobyerno? Ano ba sa ginawa kay Noah? Now you can eat everything. Now you can eat meat. Isa lang pwede, hindi mo pwede himuon. Pat yun ang isig katao mo. You can kill animals for food. Don't eat their blood. But don't take another life of a human being, because if you take another life, your life will be taken. That is an establishment of government. Genesis 9, God is established capital punishment or death penalty to be enforced by governments. It may be a simple form of government, but Genesis 9 is the beginning of human governments, where while prior to that, it was just human beings ruling over creation. Notice, sinong hari-hari sa garden? Si Adan. Adam gave names to all the animals. They rule over all creation. Hasta nga naglabot sa kay Noah. But from then on, the flood, man has to be regulated more and more through governments. Yet government, no matter how corrupt it is, subongga sa lang Amerika, kay gabuto sila. But no matter how corrupt a government is, it is still a reflection of God's image in man, which is the ability to rule and to exercise power. That's why an anarchist state is a failed state. Why? Wala na sang form of ruling. Diba? Anything goes. Kalaw ay, magkadto ka sa Somalia, way kakabalo sinuding presidente, sinuding hari, mansig-mansig sila. And I think Somalia is a reflection of the book of Judges, where there is no king in Israel, wala may gahari, anything goes. So it's a chaotic state, kalaway. Right? Because man created in the image of God is a function. This is the potential of man. We are created to rule. So as we fulfill this function of ruling over creation as God's representative, we fulfill our purpose of glorifying God. So may tatlong areas: science, technology, and government. So kung ang bata sang miga nilang Lisa, mas nisa, nay, gusto ko magpadalagan, SK. Ano sabat niya na? Kita yang ang mga Kristohanon way taga-involve sa politika. Okay. We stay away from politics. The fact is, if good people are doing nothing and we are allowing bad people to be in positions of power, hasta pa niya san, ang unrighteous will rule the land. Okay? So if you ask me, as a pastor, pwede ko yan magpadalagan kagawad, konsehal, kung man ginapadalagan ang tanod, no? Napili lang sa'yo, no? Ginagalan sa kape, pabantay. Siya lang nagadagan. If you ask me, pwede ko ihan to run for an office, whether a simple office of a barangay captain or a town mayor or a senator or a president? The answer is we fulfill the function of God, God's representative as ruling over creation. And when we fulfill this, we glorify our God. Only with a disclaimer. It's hard to run for an office. It's hard to stay righteous, to have integrity if you are in office. So you need to be courageous. You need to be strong. So kung feeling mo makakompromise ka, that is not the place for you. But we fulfill the function of ruling over creation if we discover the earth, if we develop the earth, and if we rule the earth even through government. Okay? So, amo pa lang ni Tasubong, the function of co-ruler. Kanaming a term, co-ruler. Gaupod ko rule sa Ginoo. That's why in the New Testament we are created anew to be kings and priests of God. Ano nang meaning sina? We were created to rule the earth. Okay? You're not technically a king. Positionally, sa kalibutan, no one recognizes you as king. But by God's design, if you discover the earth, if you develop the earth, and if you rule over the earth, you are God's co-ruler as His representative. So when you do science, when you do math, when you farm, when you raise children, you are ruling over the earth. So I need to develop and discover the earth. Okay? So knowing how the world works through science can help us know how to use the earth wisely. Okay? Kaya kalaway, ano niyang, and I think I just appreciated sa pagdako ko na nga sa balay namon nga katanda si Papa, ini nga kahoy kilala niya, ina nga dahon kilala niya, ini nga amo ni kilala niya. Pero feeling mo daw siya lang niya ang kabalo sang botani. Feeling mo daw siya ginang expert sa tanan nga tanom. So you don't know how to use the earth if you're ignorant of it. Kung nabalaan mo lang, ang utan halin sa din, 7-Eleven or sa supermarket. You don't even know actually it came from an actual plant. Doko weird nga kalibutan, no? So if you know how the world operates, you know how to use it. Okay? So, application. How do you see or value yourself when you realize that you were created in the image of God? Realizing that God created you in His image, what value does it give you? To think that you are not a holy animal. Hindi ka holy cow. What value does it give you? Okay? And in light of the fact that as God's image bearers, we ought to function as co-rulers in the world, putting the world to good use through discoveries, ang gwa sina, ikaw ang mananakop subong. We are the, anong ganyan tawag sa English na, anong mananakop yun eh? Colonizer. Nakaubusan ako English ba? Putting the world to good use through discoveries and development of science and technology. In what ways do you think a Christian can be involved in the development of science and technology? Or in a way, in what specific ways can believers remain faithful and be involved in the field of science, technology, dugangan ko pa, and government? And how can science coexist with unbelieving, God-denying scientists? Kung na mo na yung gusto sudlan, how do you think you can coexist with scientists who go out of their way trying to disprove God? So we will break out into groups and I'll give you 10 minutes to discuss these questions and report. Pares man sang last time, tatlo lang ka sabat, kaya ka pamangkot inyo sabton. How do you see or value yourself when you realize you were created in the image of God, and in what specific ways can you remain faithful? Okay, in what specific ways can you remain faithful and be involved in science, technology, and government? Okay. But before we go there, any question? Okay, last time nalipat ko magpapamangkot sa inyo. Kay after sini, ma-reporting na lang, then ma-dismiss na lang tayo. Any question before ta mag co-ruler lang tayo subong? Question na kamo kayo, ma-report ka mo yapon. Any question? No.
Usually, at mga Pilipinas, dito, right ako, nandiyan sa government, will, intellect, emotion. I don't know until the government.
Yes. Sa doon alin nga standard syllabus. Intellect, emotion, kag will.
Pagkatapos ang book na ang syndrome, wala ang yung ginagawa ni Kaiser niya. So yeah, we are created to image God, to be His images. It is what we are by definition. The image is not an ability we have, but a status. We are God's representatives of the earth, to be human to image God. We are to create more imagers, to be fruitful and multiply, to build, in order to oversee the earth by stewarding its resources and harnessing them for the benefit of all human imagers.
No.
Fruitful and subdue.
Okay. Kaya nga, kung manotice nyo, ang verse nga ginagamit sining mga image, nga intellect, emotion, and will, Genesis 1. So where can you see from the text ang intellect, emotion, and will? Wala. That's topical. That's theology. You can argue that in our intellect, in our emotion, and will, are we similar to God? Yes. But it's not in the text. Amo lang na. But if you look at the text, how are we like God? Immediately, pag silang let us make man in our image, they will rule. Let us make man in our image, they will subdue the earth. Amo na yada yun. Let us make man in our image, man and woman. Nga. Relationships. And kay may bayi kag lalaki, they will marry and have children, they will co-create. Okay, so muna, and they will steward the earth. So textually, that is how you do theology. You do theology, you develop theology from the text, not from the textbook. So ginahimo ni namon niya, ginparot lang namon, kay gintudlo man na sa amon. We do theology out of a textbook, not out of the biblical text. Okay, so I prefer this kind of theology kay halin niya sa biblical text. Very good question. Okay. Any other question? So, to discover and develop the earth, developing can be as complex as developing an app, developing iPhones, developing an MRI machine, or to the point of developing a backyard farm. So you don't discount that a farmer is less of a developer than a technologist. Kaya kung wala may matanom, ano kauno ni Steve Jobs? Diba? Farming is also technology. And nowadays, ang farmers, meron silang drone. Kaya mo na ginagamit nila mag-spray sang insecticide para madungan tapatay tanan temprano. So at least, diba? Okay. So you don't devalue farmers because they're also technologists. Okay. All right. Any other question before we go to our group discussion? Okay, hindi na yan mag-contradict. That's why there's no black and white answer to that question. But the clearest answer is, especially sa next time, ang isa taka function is co-creator. Man and woman. Meaning, in-create sa Ginoong tao para maglalaki kag babae because they will copulate, they will will conceive and will have a child. That is how God will fill the earth. Mapuno ang kalibutan kay gadamo tao. Ang problema sa kalibutan sa buong overpopulation. Kaya ang tao gapunsok sa isa ka lugar. Instead of filling and discovering the whole land, diri sila mapunsok wangdo sa isa ka lugar. That is not how it's supposed to work. Okay, kaya ma-develop lang ang isa lang ka lugar. Whereas damo patulapad patanay nga mga lugar nga wala pa nila nakadtuan. So we were supposed to develop and discover the earth. In a way, ang mga amunang maghahambal, mga mananakob la, kami nakadiskubre sa Pilipinas. Ano na di dugay ng Pilipinas? Kamu pa nakadiskubre sa amon. Gwapo ka mo eh. So, there's no black and white answer. In a way, does it violate God's design? In a way, the natural design is man and a woman. Kaysa test tube, anong ginagamit nila? Man and a woman man po na. But it's not through natural means. Okay? Ang outcome sina, anong ginagamit mo? So, dira ka masugod, ano ang intention sa Ginoo, anong design sa Ginoo, and am I using it right? Amo nang weird nga butang. Kay pagtudlo kasi sa hambal nila, teacher, pwede man niya subong magbata ang mga tumboy. Nga how, duwa ka egg makababata ka bisan ibutang mo pa na sa test tube. Don't you need another man to help them? Bisan may duwa ka egg pwede na ka fertilize. Okay. Hindi ko scientist dan. So balikan mo gid gyapon, anong original intent sang Ginoo? Yes.
I think kaya ako niya sa opinion ko, ang cloning niya, doga ko na din. Kaya sa insist na yung cloning. So, kung ang cloning, yung na-store out, doon sa cloning niya, doon mo pa na yan.
Ang weird sina is God already made us to be creators. Pero hindi pa ta kontento through natural means. It became so normal that there is life being created every day, yung gusto tayo ibutang sa laboratory. So, hindi ko pa na gusto pa dalman, kaway pa kalabot, ari pa lang to di sa co-ruler. So, sa ruler lang tayo mas tayo. So, i-reserve ng mga question yung nami mag-abot sa co-creator. Okay? Any other question? All right. O, last na lang. Ano pa?
Report pa tayo.
Ma-report. So, ikaw na kasabak? Or pamangkuton mo ang imo mga grupo. Pero sabtong ko na sa uli. Okay, any other question? All right, sige. So I'll give you 10 minutes in 4:55. Yes. Ang groupings. All right. Ang groupings is tatlo di sila. Tatlo ka mo to ni Larissa kag ni Jima. Tatlo ka na
Ano kayo, learn na bilang ako.
Apat ka mo ni Joy. Sige, sige. Tatlo ka mo dito, Tats. Tatlo ka muna ni sa mga lasap. Dito ka mo sa likod. Dito ka mo sa likod. So, may isa ka secretary, mag-gather sa inyong isa ka secretary, mag-gather sa inyong answers. Then, may isa ka reporter. Okay, may isa ka reporter. Right? 3 questions in 10 minutes, 4:55.